Thank you for having us. My name is Priyanka Sadagopan, and I'm going to be in my second year of being president for the club in Frisco, Texas, Heritage High School's Grow Up. And I'm very excited for today's panel about LGBTQ rights in the criminal justice system and breaking down legal barriers and continuing that fight for equal rights outside of the courtroom. And it's my honor to be able to talk to Menaka Guruswamy and Arundhati Katju. And if they want to introduce themselves, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Menaka Guruswamy. I'm a litigator. I litigate large constitutional rights cases, and I live and work in New Delhi in India.
Hi, I'm Arundhati. I'm also a lawyer. I do criminal cases. I do cases of all kinds. It's really exciting to be here. I'm so happy that we're talking.
That's great. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about intersectionality. So according to the person who coined the term, intersectionality is being inclusive and taking like different forms of discrimination into account, like overlapping forms as a part of one's identity. So why is intersectional advocacy important for achieving equality for all? Why do you think?
So I think that's a good question, right? And I think it's the heart of so much of rights work and rights movements of all kinds, right? What does intersectionality mean? It means that you would have different identities. Those could be identities located in race, persons of color, as we say. It could be identities located in gender. It could be identities located and influenced by a class. In India, caste, which is hugely important. And obviously religious minorities. Sexual orientation. So different people's identities intersect in different ways. So you could be, a fabulous queer person of color, who in India may also be lower caste, right? So this is how identities intersect and either privilege or disempower, right? So either cause advantage or disadvantage. And so rights movements of any kind, including litigation of any kind, has to take all of these intersections of advantage and disadvantage into account as we plan strategies, as we tell stories in court, and as we hope to make change. And that's really the idea, I think, of intersectionality.
Would you like to add anything, Ms. Katju?
Yeah, I think, when we as lawyers, when we go to court, there's a kind of myth that everyone is equal before the law, right? Or maybe not a myth, that's also like aspirational, right? But so often the reality that we know is that the way people get treated by the criminal justice system is different and is so different depending on who they are. So you want equal treatment, but what your identity is really affects outcomes in the criminal justice system. Whether you're in India or in the United States or in other parts of the world, this is well documented. So some of the work that we do as lawyers, it can break down to a case-by-case basis, but sometimes it means pointing out that our clients are not being treated equally because of who they are and where they're coming from.
And then, an example of this would be how the police would treat different minorities, racial minorities, caste-based minorities, religious minorities, or minorities in terms of orientations, right? So you would be treated differently. You may be let off with a warning or a fine as opposed to being arrested, right? For the same offense or for the alleged offense. And then, of course, in court, you may have disparate sentencing by a judge on the basis of race, for instance, or gender, or religion, or orientation, or class, or caste. So that's the point. That is that gaze of the law of the state? Is that gaze an objective, neutral, fair gaze? Or is it a gaze that is deeply influenced by past prejudice? And I think the law has often, in many contexts, before the work is done to reforming the law has often reflected past prejudices.
I really like the way you worded that first answer. So now moving on, you guys advocated for the decriminalization of homosexuality in India, and India's Supreme Court unanimously ruled to decriminalize that. And it was this incredible landmark win. So what impact do you think that overturning that like old sodomy law would have not only in India, but like in the entire world?
So thank you for that. To give you a little background, right? Section 377, which was the Indian sodomy law, came into Indian law because of India's history of colonialism. So you see similar laws across post-colonial jurisdictions, whether it's Kenya or South Asia, Mauritius, Singapore, these are all countries which have had similar provisions. The UK did away with its own version of the sodomy law in the 1960s. And you had different sodomy laws in different states in the United States, which finally got overturned with a US Supreme Court decision in 2003 in Lawrence versus Texas, right? So countries that have a history of British colonialism have all had to deal with these laws. And so what that also means is that when a jurisdiction like India makes change, then for other countries in the global south that have a shared history of colonialism and also for similar reasons have the exact same, in many cases, sodomy laws, they can look to the Indian Supreme Court, even while they apply their own constitutional values and they apply their own law, but they look to the Indian Supreme Court as a court from a large democratic and constitutional tradition that has been able to overturn its own sodomy law.
Yeah. And also, I agree with that. And, also the fact that this is the world's largest constitutional democracy, right? This is not a Western country. It's a democracy in the global South. It is a fairly religious country, it's a fairly spiritual country, and it has a great tradition of constitutional democracy. So when a country like India, then you have a constitutional court that gives this profoundly, sort of sweeping judgment, right? Not just striking down a law, but speaking for the rights of queer Indians, then it does have a cascading effect in terms of spurring conversation in other courts as well. When I've gone to other countries, met judges in other courts, they're very interested always in India. Judges in the global South do look to the Indian Supreme Court, not to make up their minds, but to think about the issue on hand. So I think that it has this profound impact on at least thinking through these issues, saying that when the world's largest constitutional democracy can make this kind of profound change in this kind of sweeping way, and it's a beautiful, wide-ranging judgment. It's not about what you can do, in your home or in your bedroom. It is about how you exist in public as a full citizen, right? When the world's largest constitutional democracy can do that, then maybe it is something to think about as these challenges now are pending or have taken place in other countries as well. So, we think and we hope that it will spur thoughtful conversations in countries that still have sodomy laws in place. It will spur conversations on, colonial legacies, but will spur conversations on what is freedom and how nations need to introspect on who they've kept subjugated.
That's great. Hopefully, more countries can think about this situation and we can see more change happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as your job as advocates, you often face setbacks along the way, I'm assuming. So could you tell us about some of your biggest barriers you faced and how you were able to overcome those?
Well, even in this case that we did against the sodomy law, against 377, I mean, the reality is that before we won, we lost, right? And we lost at the Supreme Court. We lost about 5 years before the judgment that we finally won. And it was a huge setback. I mean, I think it was a setback, professionally. Because we were lawyers in that courtroom. We were lawyers who practiced in the same court that had just said that the sodomy law was okay. And it was a case that we had been working on for some years, and that meant a lot to us. So I think you have to be ready for losses in that journey towards victory, right? And some of it is having the resilience to go back to the drawing board. Some of it is looking at your own work and thinking, well, where did we go wrong? What will we do differently next time? And it's also about having faith, right? So for us, and for the petitioners who we finally represented in court, who were, at the beginning, 5 gay people who went to court and said that, well, we're here, we're queer Indian citizens, and the law affects us. I think what it was also founded on, that ability to go back, was also founded on having faith in the institution, right? Thinking that the institutions that we work with can recognize their own mistakes, that they can do better, and that they can go back and correct their own mistakes. So I think, for me, that's an immediate example of a setback, and really having to go back and overcome it.
And I think also, Priyanka, I think the big thing is, these are long journeys, these are long movements, these are generations of lawyers who work on it. There were lawyers before us, we're here, and hopefully, your generation will take these battles forward. That's the point, right? That's how you make change. So these are journeys that different generations of lawyers, petitioners, activists, just folks who want better lives, make across generations. And I think we are acutely aware that we are a process. We are part of this long journey. And we hope that younger generations will take these battles and other battles forward. And I think that's really, that's really what gives you hope, right? When you lose, knowing that, you will go back to court, or you will go back to parliament, or whichever institution you're trying to petition, or just maybe it's public opinion, but also knowing that there have been generations before you that have battled, and there are generations coming that will continue that work.
Yeah, hopefully we all can Girl Up can continue advocating for LGBTQ rights for all. And I think we have time for one more question. So even though India has ruled for the decriminalization of homosexuality, new rulings may be unlikely to transform public opinions. So how does the fight for LGBTQ plus rights continue outside of the courtroom?
I think it's a very good question. So, you're right. This is one part of a battle to change, right? And change societal attitudes. But it's very interesting because, sodomy laws, or laws of any kind that discriminate, right, actually have a huge bearing on societal opinion, because it is an indication to society of a certain kind of morality which is meant to be practiced. So we have seen since 2018 a sea change in attitude. That's the big thing. It's not just now that multiple high courts or lower courts from the Supreme Court are upholding the right of same-sex couples to live together, to be protected from their families, and we have decision after decision coming month after month. But you see that in the press. You see that in movies. You see that on TV. You see that in editorials. You see that in writing. I mean, you see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook. This is a different country for LGBTQ people right now, and sure, we have miles to go, but you can feel that difference. And so it also shows you the importance of taking down laws that discriminate.
Would you like to add anything real fast?
Sometimes I think Menaka says it all, and then she's done it perfectly. Don't add anything.
Yeah, it was so I think we have to wrap up now, but it was an honor to talk to you about these topics and know more about what you're doing and what the situation is like right now. It's the topic that hits very close to home for me too. So it was like very fun to learn more about it. So thank you for coming to this panel, and
thank you for
having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thanks,
and thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work that you do.
You and our best really to Girl Up. Really, it's so important that we have events like this.